Hello there, good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to Year End Part 2, where I'll take you through setting up your 2025 payroll. My name's Duncan, I'm your host and presenter, and I am joined today by my colleagues Alan, Cormick, Jade, and Ollie, who are all standing by in the background, ready and waiting to answer your questions. Let's now take a look at what we'll cover in the webinar. So we'll start this session off by taking a look at the process to set up the 2025 tax year. This will involve transferring your payroll data from Sage Payroll 2024. Once it's transferred, we're going to be setting up your new payroll calendar for 2025 and, if applicable, clearing your financial balances. We'll explain exactly what balances are cleared when you go through that option. We'll then look at setting period 1 of the new year and retrieving the latest RPNs from revenue so that you can import the latest tax credits and cut-off points in line with the budget changes. And then we'll finish the webinar today by running through what's new for 2025, including those key budget changes and some of the improvements that you'll find in the latest version of Sage Payroll. So everything up until this point was covered in Year End Part 1. If you haven't seen that one, it is available to watch as a recording, or we do have some live sessions coming up before Christmas. So let's get things started with setting up the 2025 tax year. Now, the way that you do this is that you'll start in Sage Payroll 2024, and you should be at status end of period, ideally for your last period of the year. When you're at end of period, you'll be able to run the task to set up the 2025 tax year, which will then transfer your payroll data into Sage Payroll 2025, ready for processing in that new year. Now, when it does that, the cumulative figures for the tax year are cleared from the employee records. Any leavers that left in 2024 are removed from that payroll, and RPN numbers, RPN logs and payroll submission logs are all cleared in the 2025 version of your payroll. But you can view all of that information for 2024 in your 2024 software. Now, it is important to note that you can't run this task until you've installed the year-end update. So you will need to be on version 27.3, and you can install that if you haven't already done so by clicking Help and Check for Updates. So I'm going to show you this step in a demo. Let me just bring the slides down. And we'll start this one off in Sage Payroll 2024. So as you can see at the top of the screen here, I have updated to the latest version. I'm on version 27.3. And you can see at the top of the screen here, it does say PYE 2024 ready. I have also completed my final pay run of the year. So looking at the bottom of the screen here, you can see that my payroll status is end of period, and that's for period 52, which was my last pay date of the year, the 27th of December. Now, to set up the new year, all you need to do is go to the year-end menu, come down to tax, and then choose this third option down, set up 2025 tax year. Once you've clicked on that, you'll see a confirmation message asking you to click continue to create your 2025 payroll data. So if I do just that, I'll click continue. You'll see that progress bar that moves across the screen, explaining what's happening. And when it's complete, you'll see this confirmation message saying you've successfully copied your payroll into Sage Payroll 2025. So we can close that confirmation message. And then if you have other payrolls that you're ready to set up for the new year, it's just a case of repeating those same steps by logging into the other payrolls, go into the year end and tax menu, and then setting up the 2025 tax year. So if I minimize 2024, you'll see on my desktop, I've got my new shortcut for Sage Payroll 2025. And if I double click that shortcut, it's going to take us to the usual login screen. So I'll pop my user details in. And what we should find now is that we have that payroll available to select. So this is the one that I've just set up. So I'm going to select that and enter my payroll password. And then if I click OK, that has then taken us in to Sage Payroll for 2025. So the version number for this one, if we check at the top, is version 28.0. You can see it's budget 2025 compliant, and at the bottom of the screen here, tax year 2025. Now, as part of transferring that data, I'm just going to point out a few things that have happened. So if we take a look at an employee record, and if I select the pay and year-to-date tab, you can see any values for the tax year have been cleared down to 0. So we've got a lot of zeros on this page for the tax year. The same goes for payments and deductions. So tax year, hours and values are all cleared. And deduction tax year values have been cleared. We don't have an RPN number yet for 2025, and it's just copied over last year's tax credits and cut-off point, but that will all be updated when we retrieve our first RPNs in the new year. So it's cleared the tax year-to-date values. If we check out some of the logs, so from direct payroll reporting, RPN, view the RPN log, you'll see that this has been cleared out for 2025. So no logs to view at this time. The same goes for payroll submissions and enhanced reporting submissions. If you have any of those, you should find that the logs have all cleared. But obviously you can still check the 2024 information in your 2024 software. So we've transferred our payroll across. Nice and straightforward, just to start off there. So you do this from 2024. Make sure you're at end of period, and ideally you should have finished processing 2024. Now, it is possible to set up 2025 at end of period for an earlier period in the year, but be aware if you do that, it could cause discrepancies in financial balances moving into the new year if your financial year doesn't start in January. And if you've taken on any new starters or leavers since the point you did that transfer, they won't be correctly copied across either. So what you should do is wait until you finish your last period of the year. You're at end of period, run setup 2025 tax year, and everything will then move across. So our next step will be to set up our calendar for 2025. And as part of this step, if you set your financial year to align to the tax year, so if you have a financial year that runs January to December, you will also be prompted to clear your financial balances. Now, the financial year details are saved in your current payroll calendar, so you can check this in 2024 just by going to company payroll and then calendar. And if you've got the box ticked, like we have in the screenshot, that the financial year is the same as the tax year, as part of setting up your payroll calendar, you will see a prompt to clear your financial balances. Now, for the majority of users, when you see that prompt, you should choose the option to clear down financial year balances. And that will ensure that they start to count up again from January the 1st. But there is an option of not clearing down those balances and doing it manually from the year-end financial menu. So that gives you a bit more control over exactly what payments and deductions are cleared, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility. Now, if you do choose to clear down financial balances, the balances that I've highlighted in these screenshots are the figures that will clear down. So in non-taxable deductions on the pay year-to-date tab, the financial year figure would get cleared to 0. The PRSI for the financial year would be cleared down. And then for payments and deductions, the hours and value to date for the payments would all be cleared. And then the employee balance and the employer balance for the deductions are the ones that clear down automatically. But just to let you know, if you have got deductions with reducing balances, such as a bike to work scheme, it's a common example, it will not clear the remaining balance for that, because that is required in order to stop that deduction at the right time. Now, if your financial year doesn't align with the tax year, you won't have to do this step. You'll be prompted to do this step at the point your new financial year begins. So you would then move on to setting up your new payroll calendar. And this is as simple as recording your first pay period dates. And the rest of the calendar will be built from that date. So you would enter your first pay date of the year. Now that is the date that the employees receive their pay. It's not the date they worked up to or the date that you physically processed it. It's the date that they're going to get the money. If required, you can set a different bank, check, or gyro date. If you paid monthly, you'll need to select valid pay days, so which days of the week your employees can be paid, and then you click update and that creates your calendar. But I'm going to show you all of this in the next demo. So let's just bring those slides down. And we're going to start by going into the company/payroll menu here at the top of the screen, and then selecting the calendar option. Now, because my financial year is the same as the tax year, at the point I set up this calendar, I am being asked if I want to clear down financial year balances. So I do want to do this. So I've got this option selected, clear down financial year balances. If I didn't want to do it right now, or if I want to do it manually, I can select the second option. But we're going to choose to clear down. I'm going to click continue. It then confirms that the financial year balances are cleared, and that takes us into the calendar screen. So I am going to start with a weekly calendar, but I will show you examples of a monthly calendar as well. So first thing I need to do is to specify my first pay date of 2025. Now in my example, my employees are paid every Friday, and the first Friday in 2025 will be the 3rd of January. So that's what I'm going to enter as my first pay date of the year. And then if required, if you need your bank date to be different, for example, you need an earlier bank date for use with your bank payment file so that the employees actually get paid on the pay date, you can enter a different date for bank date. So if my bank file required the previous day to the pay date, I can enter that as the bank date for the first pay period, and the remaining periods will follow that same pattern. Now, if you use check dates or gyro dates, you can display them on your calendar by clicking on this button. So we can switch those on or off. By default, it will only show pay and bank date. And if you're happy with those first pay period dates, you would click update, and then you can see that it's created our calendar. So based on period 1, where my pay date was the 3rd of January, and the date for my bank file is the 2nd, it's then created pay dates and bank dates for every other period of the year. I can scroll all the way down to period 52 in this example, and I'll see that my last pay date of 2025 will be the 26th of December. Now, if required, you could make changes to individual periods, pay dates and bank dates, but the pay date must always fall into that correct tax period of the year. So first pay date of the year for weekly must be between the 1st and 7th of January. First pay date for monthly between the 1st and 31st of January. Financial year details are shown underneath. So this is what I was talking about earlier. I've got it ticked so it's the same as the tax year. So my next financial year will begin after period 52. And then if I was happy with that calendar, I would simply click save to save my changes. Now I'm going to cancel out because I do want to show you a monthly calendar. And just to share a top tip with you, if you do have a payroll where you're planning to change the pay frequency, so if, for example, you were moving your employees from weekly to monthly, if you're able to do this at the start of a tax year, that's the ideal time to do it because you can simply change the pay frequency on the existing payroll and you won't have to mess around with kind of transferring employees to a different payroll. So I'm going to do that just to show you a monthly calendar. So if I go to company/payroll and check my company details, here on the General tab, you'll find your payroll frequency. And start of the tax year is pretty much the only time that you can change this. So I'm going to switch mine to a monthly and click OK. You can see the frequency at the bottom has now changed to monthly. And let's have a look at setting up a monthly calendar. So it's company/payroll. Coming down to calendar. Again, I've already done it, but I'll just click continue to clear down the financial year balances. And this is the new calendar tab for a monthly calendar. So it's similar to weekly. We still specify our first pay date of the year. So my first example, my employees get paid on the 25th of each month. So for the first pay date, I'm going to put the 25th of January. But I also then need to select valid pay days. So my employees get paid on banking days. So valid pay days are any dates Monday to Friday. Again, if required, I could set a different bank date. If you leave any of these blank, it will just copy the pay date. So this time I'm just going to set the bank date to the same as the pay date. And if I then click update, I'm just getting a warning here to tell me that the 25th of January isn't a valid pay day. It's not a Monday to Friday. So it is going to use a slightly earlier date for period 1. But I just need to click OK to that. And you can see there, it's set my pay date and bank date for month 1, Friday the 24th of January, and then it's using the 25th for all months that it can do, except those months where the 25th is not a valid pay date. So this is a monthly calendar where pay dates are set to the 25th. And again, you can make individual changes if you need to any of these dates, as long as they fall in the correct tax period. Other ways you could deal with monthly, if it's not a specific day of the month that's your pay date, maybe it's the last day of the calendar month or last working day of the month, is that you do have a setting within valid pay days to choose last day of month. So if I tick that, it's going to ignore the date entered here. If I want my bank date to be different to the pay date, I can kind of set a difference of 1, -1, etc. But this would set up a calendar where last working day of the month is pay date. And if I click update, you can see there, January has the 31st of January, 28th of February, etc. I've got a few with slightly earlier pay dates because the last day must land on a non-banking day. So hopefully you get the idea with those couple of examples. I am just going to cancel out of this monthly calendar and switch myself back to weekly, because for this demo, I am using a weekly payroll. I'll just quickly set up my weekly calendar again. So I set my first pay date of the year, Friday the 3rd. This time I'm just going to use the same date as my bank date. So I'm just going to click update, and there, that's my calendar for 2025. I've had a quick look through and I'm happy with that. So I can go ahead and save the changes. Now, just going back to those financial balances, if we take a look at the employee records, what we can see here on pay and year to date is that the financial year balance is now cleared for non-taxable deductions and employers' PRSI. On the payments tab, my financial balances are also cleared for all of those payments. And for the deductions, we've got them cleared. With the exception of the total balance can be cleared from the year end and financial menu if required. So I just want to recap the steps for setting up the calendar, and then we can move on to setting period 1. So it's company/payroll and then calendar. It's all about the first pay date of the year. So the first date that the employees receive pay in 2025. Input that as your pay date. If required, bank, check and giro date can be different to that. And if you pay monthly, bi-monthly or quarterly, you choose those valid pay dates. Click update to create your calendar. See an example there of a weekly calendar on the slide. Check you're happy with all of those dates, and then you click on to save. So with the calendar set up, you are ready to process period 1. So this is the same as processing any other period, but when you retrieve your RPNs, you are going to be expecting some changes for the first period of the year. So we set our period, we'll get validate payroll data to run automatically and let us know if any errors are found. We can then retrieve our RPNs, and having done that with our employees being up to date, we can go in and start entering their timesheets. So let's pick up the demo from where we left off. So for my weekly payroll, I'm going to start by clicking on set period. So the period number will default to 1. It's exactly what I want it to be. We can check we're happy with the pay date and bank date. So you can make changes to these dates at the point you set a period if you didn't update it in your calendar, but generally you would use the dates picked up from your calendar. I'm then going to click OK to confirm these details. And then I'm seeing this pop up because I use holiday tracking in Sage Payroll. And because my holiday year runs from the 1st of January, I'm now at the point where I do need to roll forward the payroll's holiday and absence year. So a bit like the financial balances, it's important to do this at the right time and to select the appropriate settings for the way your holiday scheme works. So I am going to choose to roll forward the holiday and absence year, and then we can decide whether to carry forward employee holidays due into the next holiday year. So if they didn't use all of their holiday, for example, to set the next holiday year start and end dates, it's definitely what we want to do. And then the option to set any adjustments to 0 if you've entered holiday adjustments. So I'm happy with those settings. I'm going to continue to set period. That progress bar that just flashed up was validate payroll data running automatically, but no issues were found, so I'm not seeing any alerts. And you can now see at the bottom of the screen, I'm now at start of period for period 1 for my weekly payroll, pay date being the 3rd of January. So next step is to retrieve my RPNs. So I'm going to click on this option in the process map. You should be doing this at the start of each period. So there's my certificate details. So I'm going to connect to ROS and retrieve the latest RPNs from revenue. Now, RPNs for 2025 usually become available during December of 2024. So they may not be there just yet, but if they're not, they'll be available soon, certainly by the time you come to process period 1. And as you can see in this demo, we have found some updated RPNs. In fact, we've got one for each employee. You can see that we have got some changes. They're effective from the 1st of January. And if we wanted to preview the detail of any of these RPNs, it's just as simple as clicking on the information icon just here. And you can see for this first employee, we've got some updated tax credits and standard rate cutoff points. We've also got a change to the USC rate cutoff. And there's actually a new field on the RPN for 2025, which will indicate if any of your employees have drawn down their state pension contributory, which might mean you need to make a change to their PRSI class. So nothing coming up for this particular employee, but I do have one employee in this list who is over the age of 66 now. And on her RPN, I am being told that she's drawing down the state pension. And it's actually telling me here that I need to check and update their PRSI code as required. Now, don't worry if you don't spot it by clicking on the information icon, because when you import your changes from an RPN, as I'm going to do now, you will see this big warning if any of the RPNs included a state pension flag and the employee isn't on the appropriate PRSI class, which is usually J1 for employees over 66 who are drawing down state pension, or any employee over the age of 70. So we've got this warning, and if we export the RPN details, it'll actually identify which employee it is. You'll find it on the last page actually, so I'll just skip to page 12. It's Rosalind Swift that needs a change to the PRSI class. And if you haven't done it at this point, even if you've already retrieved the RPNs, you can always go back into direct payroll reporting, RPN, view the RPN log, and you'll be able to get to that detail from here. So keep an eye out for any of those flags on your first RPNs of the year, particularly if you've got employees around the age of 66. With that done now, I can then go in and start to enter my first timesheets of the new year. So I would do that in the usual way. I prefer to use the batch method myself. And just to keep an eye out for any sort of warnings that you might see here. So I've got a notification of an employee over 66. So we do know that we need to check the PRSI code for them. And I also have an employee who is now being paid below the national minimum wage, because that increases from the 1st of January. So we're going to need to review the pay rates for that employee as well. So that is setting period 1. We're now set up to complete our first pay run of the year. So those steps are setting the period, validate payroll data, tends to run automatically these days, retrieve your first RPNs, keep an eye out for any state pension indicators, and enter the time and pay. And it's those RPNs that'll bring in changes to things like tax credits, standard rate cutoffs, USC thresholds, local property tax, if employees are paying that through payroll, and that new state pension indicator. So it'll make the update in the appropriate record. Just want to quickly show you actually in payroll where you can make a change to a PRSI code if you need to. So if I just bring up payroll for 2025 and go into edit my employees, just going to pick out the employee that was mentioned on the RPN. So it was Rosalind. And then if I go on to the tax PRSI USC tab, you can see I've got the PRSI code here. So this one needs changing, in this example, to J1. And you can see as well, RPN number has been populated and the latest tax credits and cutoff points are now saved in the employee records. So we've got our 2025 set up. Just to recap those steps, we set up the new tax year from 2024, which transferred our payroll data into the 2025 software. We then set up the new payroll calendar, which also involved clearing financial balances if required. So if your financial year runs January to December, once you've got your calendar set up, you can then set period 1, retrieve the latest RPNs, and away you go into the new tax year. So that's kind of the practical side in the program, but I did want to kind of finish the webinar with a quick run through of what's new for the new tax year for 2025. And I'm going to start with some of the key budget changes that affect payroll. So we've got some of the highlights there on the slide. The standard cutoff rates have been increased. So in 2025, a single person's standard cutoff point for income tax is now €44,000. Tax credits have also been increased. So single person, employee and earned income tax credits are all now €2,000 in the new year. The upper threshold for standard rates of USC, the 2% upper threshold, has increased to €27,382. And the next band for USC, there's been a rate decrease. So that is now 3% USC rate on earnings between 27,382 and 70,044. Those changes all come through as part of the RPNs. So they should be updated as soon as you've retrieved those first RPNs. Minimum wage rates effective 1st of January are €13.50 for employees aged 20 or above. So look out for warnings on the timesheets if you have hourly paid staff. If you pay them salaried, make sure you've reviewed their pay and you are paying them at least their minimum wage. And it's worth mentioning to change to small benefit exemption. So in 2025, you'll now be able to provide up to 5 small benefits, an increase from the current 2, with a combined value of no more than €1,500. You can process your small benefits through payroll if needed. Covered that in part 1 to do your ERR submission. So from those budget changes, I just want to briefly talk about PRSI for employees over 66. So you saw some of this as part of the RPN demo, but due to a change in the rules, employees who were born on or after the 1st of January 1958 don't automatically change PRSI class at 66 anymore. Instead, their class will change when either they turn 70 or they choose to draw down their state pension contributory, whichever of those happens first. Now, last year, it wasn't so easy to work out whether an employee has drawn down their state pension unless you asked them. So Revenue have now added an indicator to the RPN. So if there is an employee that's drawn down their state pension and they're on an incompatible PRSI code, you should be alerted at the point you import their RPN. So do keep an eye out for that. It's one of the improvements in 2025. Next thing to talk about briefly is statutory sick pay. So the statutory sick leave scheme was due to increase the maximum entitlement to 7 days of paid sick pay in 2025. But at this moment in time, as the Department of Social Protection is yet to confirm the entitlement increase, we haven't included that in the year-end update. So in your current version of the programme, you'll only be able to process up to the current 5 days of statutory sick pay per year. Now, if and when the Minister or the DSP announce confirmation of that change, we will update your software. We'll provide a further update, which will then allow you to use up to 7 SSP days in a year. But if you want a reminder of how to process statutory sick pay, if you don't already have a company sick pay scheme that meets those requirements, you can find more information by following the link. Next up, we've got CWPS, that's the Construction Workers Pension Scheme. If you're a member of that, you do have some year-end tasks to complete, as the new CWPS year will start on Monday, the 30th of December, 2024. So to prepare for that, you will need to clear your CWPS balances and history, and also set up your new calendar for CWPS. Really simple to do, and I have linked to our support article on the slide here, which will take you through those steps step by step. So if you need to set that up, make sure you do that before you process period 1. And finally, we're looking a little way into the future on this one, but auto enrolment is on the horizon. It has been announced to be starting on the 30th of September of 2025. So for those of you that don't already know, it's a new retirement saving systems for employees that the Department for Social Protection are introducing. It's 30th of September is the start date for that. So from that date onwards, you may be asked to enrol your employees. This will affect employees who are aged between 23 and 60, who earn more than €20,000 per year, and who do not have a current pension scheme deducted through payroll. So that's the criteria to be auto-enrolled, but employees who are outside of that criteria will have a way of opting in to the pension. So the way that the contributions are going to work is that they will be phased in over 10 years. Initially, both the employer and employee will pay a contribution of 1.5% of their gross earnings, and that's earnings up to €80,000 per year. And that will increase gradually over that period of 10 years to the maximum rate of 6% contribution for both employee and employer. Now, there won't be tax relief as such, but for every €3 an employee contributes, the employer will match that. So they'll also put in €3, and the state will top up by a further €1. So for every 3 they put in, 7 is being paid into the pension pot. Now at this stage, there's some great guidance available on the gov.ie website that I've linked to, and I would encourage you to have a look through that if you haven't already done so. The government have set up the National Auto Enrolment Retirement Savings Authority, who will be administering all of this. And in the future, you'll start to get payroll notifications telling you as and when you need to start pension contributions, etc. But we will bring you further webinars closest to the time, which will explain exactly how it will work in your Sage Payroll software. But for now, I'd encourage you to check out the current guidance available on the gov.ie website. And that has actually brought us to the end of the content for year-end part 2. Just a reminder, if you missed it, year-end part 1 was all around finishing your 2024 payroll. We are running that live up until the 18th of December. So if you fancy joining a live session, you can sign up now. We also have a recording of that one available on our YouTube channel. So check the link on the handout for more detail. If you do need further support, we have an online help center available. You can access it by clicking the help center icon in Sage Payroll, or in your browser, go to sage.ie/help and follow the links for Sage Payroll Micropay. There's a payroll year-end hub that you'll find from there, so you'll find all the information we've covered today and more. And I would like to just tell you briefly about a brand new service that we're offering this year, our one-to-one personalized training options. So this is where you can book time with an expert who can support your very own year-end process, including downloading and installing the update if you're yet to do that. It will give you the confidence that you have all of your preparation steps covered before you finish off 2024, and you get your bespoke kind of action plan for moving into 2025, making sure that you've got all of your personal questions answered, so we can deliver that training to an individual or to a group. It's all done remotely. Charges do apply for that service, but if you'd like to find out more, get a quote or book a session, please respond to the poll that I'll put up on screen in just a moment's time. If you click yes to that poll, that will send your details through to me and we'll arrange for someone to contact you. So as I say, that's it for the presentation. We are going to stick around to continue answering your questions in the Q&A. If you'd like a copy of the handouts, do remember to download those before you leave. And if you do have any final questions, get those entered in the Q&A now. If you can't download the Q&A at the end, so do copy and paste any questions and answers that you want to keep hold of. Hello everyone, that's just me back. I think we've managed to answer most of those questions. I haven't seen any new ones pop through the last couple of minutes. So I think we are going to wrap things up at that point. I just want to say a big thank you to the team behind the scenes who've been answering your questions. And thank you for everyone that stuck with us to the very end of this webinar. Do enjoy the rest of your week. Look out for more webinars in the future on all things auto enrollment and other changes to Sage Payroll. But on behalf of myself and the team here at Sage, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on another webinar in the future. Goodbye for now.